Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janizewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Eric. How about you?
Doing fantastic. We are preparing for the holidays already.
Again?
Yeah.
Here we
Again,
I,
they say the older you get, the faster the time goes. Well, it seems like we just got through the holidays and here they are again.
yeah, but this is a special time of year. I mean, I know I say it every single year, but Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, and it's wonderful winding down to Christmas also, and all the other holidays that come with that, because it's just a great time of year to get together with family, with friends, and just celebrate each other, and hopefully take a time out from all the other stuff that's hitting us from the outside, and just really enjoy what's most important. And that's where we're all from, and especially our families, because we're all together, and it's so important. So it's a great time of year where if you got something going bad with somebody or whatever, just bury it and go out and have a great time with people. That's the recipe for success. Good intro for you.
Absolutely. And we started holiday shopping already, getting everything prepared, getting gifts for the holidays, getting all the ingredients we need for Thanksgiving dinner. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking about the importance of mental health and how making your life simpler and getting things organized can just take away stress from your life. And let's face it, there's a lot of folks that find the holidays very stressful. So we're going to be talking today about how to create processes and, some traditions that'll make your life easier. And I had a conversation with a business person this week. He was telling me that, what was causing the most stress for him was the fact that he was spending so much time putting out fires at work. And he said, the big problem was that they were completely unpredictable. And I said to him, they're probably not completely unpredictable. If you think about it, the when is probably unpredictable. You don't know when the fires are going to show up. But once you've been doing this for a while, you can pretty well predict what's going to happen, what's going to go wrong, what problems can crop up. And if you've got processes in place so that when they pop up, you pull out the process, go through the list and take care of it, it removes a lot of the stress. And he started thinking about that. And he goes, you're right. It's usually the same fires over and over again for different clients. But yes, having those processes in place would make it a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are having the same thing happen all the time, we've talked a lot the last couple of weeks about just writing things down. And if you write down the problems that you're having and you see a pattern developing or that the same thing is happening all the time,
Yeah.
um, that is basically you have a brilliant approach to looking at this, especially for the holiday season. So it's great that we're talking about this. But if you relate it to some of the happy things that we do for the holidays, like the holiday process itself, and the holiday process obviously is just a process of getting together for Thanksgiving or Christmas and so on and so forth. And you know, we always have Thanksgiving over here, and so we fine tuned it. And basically, the process is okay. Got to order the turkey, got to order the sides. Who's bringing the sides? Who's bringing the desserts? Who's coming, and all that kind of stuff. But we got it kind of fine tuned. Who's coming over here to stay with us and that kind of thing. And the bottom line is every year is great. And then when you fine tune, if you want to have good holidays, you got to have good food, which brings you to the other thing that you talk about is the recipes. So we
Yes.
got to spin this today.
You know, we talk about holiday traditions, and let's face it, everybody's got certain traditions that they've done for years, and it always makes them feel good. Well, why does the tradition make us feel good? Because we're doing the same things over and over again in the same way to get that same feel good feeling. And that really is a process. That's the core of what we're doing. Every tradition is an operations plan. And I know people start freaking out when you start talking about project management and operations manuals and things like that. So, in order to simplify it, which again is what we've been trying to talk about for the last few weeks, think about it as a recipe. Every recipe has three main parts. You've got the title of the recipe and sometimes a picture. And that's the part of it that's focusing you on what the goal is. You've got the ingredient list. The ingredient list is just a list of the resources you're going to need. It could be tools, it could be software programs, it could be certain skill sets that you need to complete something. But the ingredient list is a list of everything you'll need to complete the project to your satisfaction. And then the recipe itself is the directions. That's the checklist that you follow to get everything done. And you can put any project together in this format, so you've got your recipe for success.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about organization charts and operations manual, which I think came from the E-Myth. It's been a long time since they did that. But the organization chart for a recipe or for a holiday and so on and so forth is just what you're doing. For a business, it's what the business does. And usually, I like to do them just on spreadsheets. What you do is you just list the major components of a business, which in most businesses is business development, operations, finance, and HR. Those are like the big four for most businesses. And then you list what has to be done for that. So for business development, it could be a sales plan, it could be social media, it could be all those different things. And you just listing the type of things. And those are basically the titles for your recipe. And then when you get to how to do that, you're going to list the ingredients for doing that, who's going to be doing that, and that kind of thing. And then the directions themselves are nothing more but a checklist. So in business, when you put together an operations manual, I work with small businesses a lot, and you don't have to do a big, multi McDonald's page thing where the thing is as thick as your hand. But if you do something, just a couple of series of checklists for if you have employees, basically it's how to do the job, start to finish. And if you put that checklist together, that can be used for two purposes. Number one is training, and number two is accountability. So you give it to the employee for that. If you have a manager that you're training, you give it here's the job list, here's the description. This is how you teach the employee to work. This is how you hold them accountable for what's going on. So by going through that first, just like a good recipe for Thanksgiving and this and that or whatever, you do that up front, and then you have it going for you. And I know that on your recipe, you have 5 other dots underneath with all it starts with the recipe, but there's different things that happen, like we talk about at work. So why don't you fill us in on a couple of those different things?
Well, I mean, once you have that recipe, I mean, that's really the core. And the whole idea is that you're not reinventing the wheel every time. It's simply a matter of following that recipe and getting the same result. And that's the most important part. It starts with that recipe. And then, once you know the recipe, then you can play with it. The same way you do with cooking. Once you've got a recipe down and you've made a dish several times, then you can add a little more garlic, or you can make it a little sweeter. You can tweak the sauce a little bit. Well, once you've got the recipe, you can tweak your process to make it even better. And you really should look at it on a regular basis and say, is this still the best way to do it? So you can play with that recipe once you've got it down. But the key is you have to get it down to memory first. You have to do it over and over in the same way to get the same result. And then we talked about the ingredient list. Well, the ingredients matter. No matter how good your recipe is, if you use inferior ingredients, you're not going to get the right result. So you need to make sure your ingredients are exactly what you need. You can have a great plan, but it won't make a great business or a great project if you have poor employees or you're using bad contractors or equipment. So you want to make sure that the software you're using, the hardware you're using, the tools, the people you're working with, that they're all up to the same quality level that you're looking for. So yeah, the ingredients matter. And then
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically you say, I mean, you need the best ingredients to make the best meal. I mean, you can go out to several restaurants that have the same recipe for different things and so on and so forth, but there's one restaurant that does it better than everybody else. It may cost more, but it's because they use the best ingredients.
exactly. And then there's also, when you make a change to your process, you have to be aware that little changes have big effects. If you're making a meal and you change the temperature on your oven from 325 degrees to 300 degrees, you have to adjust the rest of the recipe to compensate. Every change you make is going to affect the entire meal. The same thing goes with the process. If you make a change, you have to see how that's going to affect the rest of the process and change the other parts to compensate. Everything is integrated, and you need to see how it all works together. And then any amateur chef has come up against this. But the fact of the matter is, when things go wrong, it requires a lot of cleanup. The same thing when you put your processes together wrong or you don't follow it exactly. Maybe you got distracted and didn't take the pan out of the oven in time and burnt the meal. Well, the same problems show up in business and life processes as well. If you make a mistake, clean up the mess and learn what the mistake was so that it doesn't happen again. Don't worry about casting blame. Don't worry about feeling bad. Just figure out what the mistake was, clean it up, and learn from it. This way you don't make the mistake again. And then the other thing, final thing that you need to remember about your recipe is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Every ingredient that you use could taste fantastic, but it doesn't taste the same as the recipe does. If you're making an apple pie, you can have great apples and you can eat the apples raw and like them, but it's not going to taste like apple pie. The cinnamon's not going to taste the same as it does when it's all together in the recipe. The recipe is greater than the sum of its parts, and that's your goal. That's what you have to remember you're striving for. And again, it's not just about getting something done. It's about making your life simpler, using the recipe so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, so that you don't have to stress out every time you do a specific task. You just pull out the recipe, follow it, and succeed. And it's also about the emotional content of it. When we talk about holiday traditions, it's all about the emotional content. The emotional content is the goal. But when you're dealing with a process for a business, that emotional content is also there. It's about getting a reaction from your customer, from your client, from your employees, even from yourself, depending on what the process is. A good process is there to make people feel good, not just get things done, but get it done so well, so consistently that people enjoy doing business with you. They enjoy being with you. They enjoy the results of that process. And that's why it's so important that you really do think of these as recipes. Because when you're cooking dinner, if you're having people over, you want these people to say, wow, that's a fantastic meal. This tastes fantastic. We're having a great time. In business, you want your customers to feel that way about your business. You want your employees to feel that way about your business. You want them to enjoy doing business and working with you. And that emotional connection is also going back to where we started this conversation a few weeks ago, is so good for people's mental health and so good for reducing stress levels. When you make people feel good, it makes you feel better. It takes stress off of you and it does the same for them.
Yeah, and talking about the process and pulling things all together, I think one of the most important things, especially when you're talking about business, I mean, when you're looking at the recipe, you talked about once you have the recipe, you can play with it. And the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, little changes and so on and so forth. As part of your process, once you have that down for your organization and for your operations manual, it is so important to make assessing part of the process and make that part of the process with your team. Because in business, maybe not in food, but sometimes you can tweak the recipe and it changes it better. But in business, things are constantly changing. And so, what is a good recipe today is may not be the best recipe tomorrow just because that's the way things are in business and in the world. So it's really, really important to set up times periodically to get together with your team, especially the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Get together with your team, mastermind. I mean, the math is 1 + 1 is 3. You get a few people in a room talking about the same issue, and you are guaranteed to have much, much better results than each person taking it on its own. So getting together is really, really important. And then you can itemize the things that you do need to tweak. It will all come together as part of that process. So assessing it and forcing yourself to take a look at the recipe and see if it needs tweaking, and seeing what you're doing with the sum of the parts there, making sure your team is organized properly, you're paying attention to them properly, and most importantly, if you have those checklists there for them, so that number one, they know what they're doing, and number two, you can hold them accountable for it. They're right there for you to tweak however it needs tweaking. So it's a great, great analogy again. And again, part of that process, assessing things, because you're forcing yourself to change your recipe in business to keep up with the Joneses.
Absolutely. You need to assess on a regular basis. Um, when we work with clients, we refer to this as the feedback loop, where the people who are involved in the process let have to contribute their point of view and what they see. And you said business is always changing. Well, that goes for food too. I mean, if you think food doesn't change, go online and look up some Hellman's mayonnaise and Jello recipes from the 1950s. Most of these recipes are things that nobody would make now. And in fact, some of them sound absolutely horrific, but they were very popular back in the 1950s. So, yes, as tastes change, as business trends change, you need to be able to tweak your recipes to keep up with that. And that feedback loop, that assessment process is so important. And you really do want to hear from, if you've got a business with employees, you want to hear from your employees, especially your frontline employees, the folks that are dealing with the clients, because they see it differently than you will. You're looking at it as this is what we have to get out, but they're seeing how the customer is reacting. And that's a very important thing to be able to react to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. I can't keep Jello and mayonnaise. That does not sound good at all.
No, none of these recipes sound good, but if you go online, you can find both
Well,
both Jello and Hellman's mayonnaise put out cookbooks to sell their products. And some of these recipes sound so horrific. It's like, I don't know who thought this would be a good idea, but the cookbooks are out there. You can probably still find some of them at used bookstores. But yeah, these are perfect example of tastes changing, trends changing, and how you need to keep up with it. Now, let's face it, in the 1950s, you're looking at cookbooks that are put out by the food companies in order to sell their products. Now, if you look at cookbooks, you're looking at paleo cookbooks and keto cookbooks and different lifestyle gluten-free cookbooks. None of this was around in the 1950s. So yeah, the food changes the same way business practices change, and you need to keep up with it. So it's a perfect reason for constantly reassessing what you're doing and getting good feedback. And again, the main focus of this is to make your life simple. The less you have to think about, the less you have to keep in your head, the more relaxed you are, the less stress you're dealing with. And again, we started talking about mental health, but stress levels also affect physical health. So all of this, it's not just about a healthy business, it's about a healthy life. It's about healthier employees. And that's also something that's very important. If you have processes to make your employees' lives easier so that they're not stressed, they're not under extreme burdens, they're going to be healthier. They're going to enjoy work more. And that's going to result in greater productivity, fewer days off because of sickness. So, I mean, the larger the company is, the bigger that impact is because you have higher productivity from employees, you have lower health care costs. So all of the things we've been talking about snowball, and you make these little changes like putting a process in place, and the results are far more than the effort to put this in place.
yeah, absolutely. Obviously, tying this whole thing together, what we have been talking about in the last several weeks is anxiety and a whole lot of negative things, but also ways to deal with that and so on and so forth. And it really comes down to taking a deep breath, a timeout, and simplifying things. And that's really what today is all about.
Yes. And that, again, we're coming into the holiday season. Take the time off. If you have vacation days, if your business is closed for some of the holidays, enjoy your time off. Don't focus on work and all the things you're going to have to do when you get back. You need to take time to relax, to shut your brain down and enjoy yourself with friends, with family, even some time to yourself. Because again, if you don't recharge yourself, the stress keeps building. So enjoy the holiday. I mean, so many people get stressed out during the holidays because there's so much to do with family coming over and meals to prepare. Write everything down. Put together the checklist of what needs to be done and then just follow the process. Pull out the recipes, write them down, and follow the procedures. Take that stress off your mind by putting it on paper or in your computer and just following along step by step. Take a deep breath and just dive in. You don't have to worry about missing a step if you've got it all written down in front of you. So that's, that's the focus of what this is simplifying, making your life easier. The easier you can make your life, the healthier you are, the happier you are, the less you have to worry about. And that's something we all need. We need that chance to take a deep breath. So put together your recipes for the holidays, put together the recipes for your businesses, put together the checklists, and just follow along. Once you've got it all written down and you've got every step written down, follow along and just enjoy the ride. So we are coming up on the end of our time for this week. So Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our audience?
Yeah, I love what you're talking about as far as the end of the year and that kind of thing. And I would start out as far as a recommendation, start writing down some things you'd like to accomplish next year now and start using this
Yep.
approach, recipes to get things going. And as Eric was saying, just take a time out. Like Dick Vitale, the famous basketball announcer in college. Those of you guys who are out there remember, we need a TO, baby.
Yep.
Which is great. But basically, all it is the what's are the processes, the hows are just writing down the recipes and tweaking them. So it's a really very very simple takeaway that we gave you today. But most importantly, just have fun. I mean, this is the holidays. One of the things as far as a recipe for happy holiday season is just throw out everything negative that you're thinking about anybody. Basically, leave all your baggage and baggage claim and just enjoy each other. I'll never forget a Thanksgiving, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, with one of my nieces who was probably about 3 years old, probably about the same age as my Cora is going to be 4 in December. And as we go around the table and everybody's talking about everything that they're thankful for and stuff like that, and then it's silence for like half a minute when we start eating, all of a sudden she says, "I don't like Thanksgiving," and just cracked the whole room. That's the one I wish I had on video, but I will always visualize that kind of stuff. Just appreciate the simple moments. They're magic.
Absolutely. Enjoy those simple moments and treasure them. And, that's something with Thanksgiving coming up, of course, be grateful for all you have. And, I think the big takeaways for today is just knowing what you're doing, knowing what you have, and putting it together so that you're not stressing about it. That's so important. And it's really what most people miss at the holidays. They use the holidays as an excuse to get stressed out. They have all of these things to do. We always have these things to do. There's always that uncertainty around the corner. But when you know how to deal with things, when you know what your plan is and you have it in front of you so that you don't have to refigure it out every time something happens. If you make the same apple pie for Thanksgiving every holiday, every year, you don't every year suddenly go, well, how do I make apple pie? Either you know the recipe or you have it written down in a cookbook and you pull out the cookbook and follow the recipe. The same thing goes for the rest of the processes in your life. Write it down, follow the recipe, and enjoy the results. And we are actually going to be taking a few weeks off for the holidays. So I'd like to wish all of our listeners a very happy Thanksgiving. And we will be back after Thanksgiving, but as the winter starts coming and the calendar turns to December, we will be back for the holidays. But I hope everybody has a fantastic Thanksgiving. And you have been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you next time.